Hello and welcome to why you should play Rainbow Six Siege. I know it's been a while, a long while, but I've been busy playing games, working for university and other stuff, so let's get into it. The game is a 5v5 tactical first-person shooter with a focus on competitive team play, especially PvP, because the PvE aspect hasn't been updated since December 1st, 2015 when the game was launched for PC, PS4 and Xbox One. The game is loosely based on the Jack Ryan universe books, especially the John Clark and Domingo Chavez Rainbow Six part about it, and it's a sort of continuation of the predecessor games, but there's not really a story in the game. It's a pure multiplayer game which you can play alone, but I wouldn't advise it. There are currently 40 operators in the game, 20 defenders and 20 attackers at the point of recording this video. There are 20 base operators, then there's 8 year 1 operators, 8 year 2 operators and 6 year 3 operators, with 2 more to come in season 4 in year 3. Every operator fills a specific role in terms of team composition, weaponry, gadgets and playstyle, so you can go in and expect there to be some kind of replayability if you switch characters. There are 3 different types of game modes in Rainbow Six Siege. The first one is defusal of a bomb. The other one is where you secure an area by occupying the room without having the enemies inside the room, and a hostage escort mission where you have to get a hostage outside the building. There's a total of 18 or more maps right now, with the ability to reinforce them, destruct them and shoot through walls and open holes in them. And now let's get into the new category that I just introduced for Rainbow Six Siege, and it's about the monetization of the game. If you want to buy the game, there are multiple tiers of the game, as we already know with Ubisoft games. There's the starter edition for roughly 15 euros, the standard edition for 40 euros, the advanced edition for 50 euros, the gold edition for 80 and the complete edition for 120. And to be honest, I can advise you to go with the standard or advanced edition. Stay away from the starter edition and really think about how many hours you want to put into Siege when buying the gold or the complete edition, since you can buy expansion passes later on too. Then there's downloadable content. You can get the year 1 or 2 operator pass for 20 euros or the year 3 season pass for 30 euros. They basically include 8 operators, and with the season pass you get boosts and some Rainbow Six credits that you can use for cosmetics and stuff like that. There are 2 different currencies in the game. There's the renown, which you get by playing the game and completing daily or weekly challenges, and there's Rainbow Six credits, which is basically real money just hidden behind some currency. So the microtransactions in the game are basically you can get operators with renown or Rainbow Six credits. I'd advise you to either buy the season pass if you want to get some operators, or just play the game and get the renown that way. I'd never spend Rainbow Six credits for buying individual operators. You can also get cosmetics with renown and Rainbow Six credits, with some cosmetics being locked behind the Rainbow Six credits part. There are also loot boxes in the game called alpha packs, which you can only get with renown, and then there are seasonal packs that you can only get with real money. That's one of the biggest gripes for me in terms of monetization, because there's just too much of it. Then there's some notable exceptions that they added in the beginning of the year 3 of the game. All base operators are completely free now. Before that you had to buy them with renown. All weapon attachments are free, and the new alpha packs can only be bought with renown. Then there's also been the Outbreak and Summer Splash and Twitch alpha packs that you can only get with real money, which are an exception, but which are not really something I'd like to see in the game. So let's talk about what I like about Rainbow Six Siege. The overall gameplay mechanics like movement, leaning and shooting feel spot on. They're really great. The focus on strategy and tactics in combination with pure skill of aiming and reaction times is a great mix. It has very good performance and a consistent frame rate and frame times, with a lot of tweakable options for lower spec PCs. The visuals are pretty awesome, apart from some faces and eyes, which are patched like every year to look a little bit better. There's an extreme depth in strategy while keeping the fundamentals and the mechanics easy, even though it's getting harder with the amount of characters getting more and more. It's just a core shooter with a touch of variety through weapon choices and gadgets. It's still a shooter at the core, even though there are a lot of tactics revolving around the gadgets. The variety of well-balanced and carefully designed maps like Oregon Border, Bank or Villa are really a nice touch because they allow for a lot of strategy without overwhelming the player from the beginning. The other thing is the interaction with the environment, like destruction and reinforcing of walls, doors and windows, allows for even more strategy than you'd have without that. So you don't only have the destruction, but you can also like hinder the player of destructing the wall to shoot you. And they're continually updating with 3 new maps, map reworks of old maps that are not working anymore, either because the meta changed or the speed of the game changed, or because they were never that great in the first place. And they're also adding new free/paid operators, which you can either grind for or outright buy. They're doing a lot of balancing changes, which keeps the game alive. And they also worked a lot on the netcode, hit registration, and some hitbox improvements. One of the things that I always liked was that the esports scene around Siege grew somewhat naturally and wasn't pushed. So if you want to have a look at Pro League, I'm gonna have a link in the description down below. And now let's talk about the biggest gripes I have with Rainbow Six Siege. Whenever there's a season release with new operators and new dynamics and new gadgets, there's always some kind of issue. Sometimes the operators are just absolutely imbalanced, like Ela or Lion, and sometimes they're just exploitable glitches, like various shield glitches that we had, which made people unable to shoot a character, or maybe they just didn't load in, so there was an invisible person shooting at you. The other thing that I noticed quite a lot is that the toxicity in the community is pretty high. I cannot compare it to other games like Counter-Strike Global Offensive because my time in these games was pretty limited in comparison to Siege. So what I can say is that there is a lot of trolling, there's some racism, and pure hate is also inside the community. And with the newest update, it's gotten a lot better because you can now mute the chat and the voice of certain players, like individual players, without disabling the chat altogether. There's also a problem with team killing and team attacking. Since there's friendly fire in pretty much every mode, you're gonna have people like hate you and kill you for doing certain things. And there's also a problem with hackers and people being boosted, but there's also been an initiative for that, since you now only can play ranked if you have two-factor authentication on your Uplay account. There's also some problems with some maps in the casual map pool because they have big balancing and design flaws. And for some reason, Ubisoft decided to put the maps they put out of the game back into the game, like Yacht. And they're just a pain to play. They're just awful and buggy and just not well designed. Also, there's some problems with the meta changes, especially from environmental gadgets to global abilities that just affect all players without any drawback for the character using it, which is also a problem, especially if you look at Lion. For the players who already know Siege, they will know what I mean. And there has been an issue of continuous server outages, hitbox issues and latency issues, which are not present at the moment of recording, but were present a few months before when I wrote the script. And one of the biggest drawbacks for the game is the monetization. You always feel a little bit like, I want to play that character, but I need to grind more hours to get it, and then you just buy the season pass and maybe stop playing the game after that. It's always a little bit tricky with the monetization because there's just so much of it and it's coming from all angles. So what's my conclusion on Rainbow Six Siege? I mean, there has been an awful launch with the game, but it has improved extremely post-launch, and the player base actually grew significantly, and the game was one of the platinum concurrent players games in Steam in 2017. I was surprised by that because I thought most of the players were either on PS4 or on Uplay, so they wouldn't show up in Steam, but it actually got in there. It also takes a lot of time and dedication to learn the maps, the cameras that are placed in the maps, the many operators that we have now, and the strategies. Especially for people who will buy the game now, they will have a lot of things to learn. It sometimes feels very chaotic at times, which can be a drawback for some people that don't like chaotic games, but it's nowhere near as bad as, for example, a Battlefield game. So there's some ramp up time, but after that, the game can be a really, really rewarding thing. And it's especially satisfying to just go in there, have some kills, and maybe clutch around. Also, it's great for teams, especially if you're playing with 5 players or even 10 players when you go into private matches and do clan matches or stuff like that. The other thing is, the game's just one of my favorite competitive shooters on the market right now, with one big gripe that I have right now, which I will talk about in an extra video. My conclusion in the end is that Siege is a great game which is currently growing or has been growing and now is a little bit dwindling, but it's still a game that is active and will probably see another few years of development with new maps, new characters, new meta changes, and there's always a community around it that is playing the game. I can recommend you buying the game, just don't get a starter edition, and I'll see you in the next video.